How's it going, fellas? Are we awake yet?
Yeah.
9 o'clock? We're good? So I understand this is a week-long program, yeah?
Yeah.
So can someone tell me some highlights or what you've been going through so far? Go ahead, yeah? Confidence? What about it?
Like help build it, like say what you mean and keep it like speak from the heart.
I love that. That's cool. Anybody else? Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, social justice. Like,
Ooh.
Have equity and compassion for everybody.
Yeah. I like that. Anybody else?
We went to the classrooms and worked with students.
Oh, cool. How was that?
Fun.
That was fun. All right, cool. So before we get started, I only have a little bit of time with y'all. And, you know, when Dr. Collier was asking me about this opportunity, I was super excited about it. But then I found out that it's a program to get males into the teaching profession. So I was like, man, there's so many things that I want to talk about. Primarily because a lot of these things are the more important aspects of what caused me or allowed me or pushed me towards being a teacher or an educator, right? But before I get started, I kind of want to put a name to all these beautiful faces in front of me. So I want to do a little bit of an introduction. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the room and just tell me your name and maybe another highlight from the week. Yeah? Anybody want to start? Here or here? he volunteered over here. Go ahead.
My name's Dennis. We made rockets on the website.
Ooh, nice. Rockets, cool.
I'm Adrian, and I think the highlight is just like meeting everybody here, the people, the atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
I'm Rudy, and I think a highlight is just hanging out with you guys.
Cool. Did y'all know each other before?
Only 4 of them.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
My name's Adrian, and another highlight would be that there was a male decline in teachers in elementary school. The majority is in like middle school or high school.
Yeah, definitely.
My name's Adrian. And
All right, I gotta keep track of the 3 Adrians, all right? Any more Adrians on this side just now? All right, cool. Sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
a highlight, just being here, getting all this information, having the opportunity, and also like being able to talk to the teachers and that's not easy.
Yeah, definitely. Cool, thank you.
My name's Jonathan, and the highlight of this week is probably just like being with the kids and like seeing like how they react to like certain things and like how they act in the classroom.
Yeah.
My name's Quincy, and my favorite part is probably building Legos on Wednesday.
Oh, Legos. Cool. Thank you.
My name is Brandon, and I think my highlight is like trying to inspire the next generation. Everything. Yeah.
I love that. Cool. Thank you.
My name is Angel, and I feel like my highlight of the week was like learning how to incorporate music into like teaching and stuff.
Man, y'all went over music too? Man, I missed out. I should have been here through the week too. Here you go.
I'm Mauricio. I love spending time with the children in the class and helping them out with the teacher.
Cool. I think with the exception of building rockets, I think I could relate to a lot of those exciting things too, as I was in my trajectory towards being an educator. Never built a rocket before, and I'm gonna have to try it now. So thank you for the introduction. I just kind of like to get to know names, right? I don't like pointing at people and saying, hey, you, what about you, right? But I just gotta keep track of the 3 agents, and everyone has name tags, so that's cool. Again, as Dr. Collier mentioned, my name is Alex Ojeda. I'm a faculty member here in the Department of Sociology here at Northridge. And as she mentioned, I run the Mosaic Mentoring Program, right? What's the Mosaic Mentoring Program? Anyone ever heard of it? Anybody? Well, before I continue, I just want to thank everybody in the room too for allowing me to share this space with you, especially Dr. Collier for the invitation. I always jump on the opportunity to talk to young men, especially young men going into the teaching profession. And just a little side note, I'm technically on vacation right now, and as soon as I leave here, I'm gonna be going out of town. So this was not in my plans, but as soon as I heard about it, I jumped on it, even though it was really stressful trying to squeeze it into my schedule. But I know the importance of events like this, right? I know the importance of programs like this. So I really made an effort to squeeze it into my schedule, had to cancel a meeting or two, but it's all good because I feel really good being here. Especially just hearing a little bit of what y'all said in terms of your experiences. It's a beautiful thing. So all the things I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk about today, I kind of try to squeeze maybe about 3 or 4 of important things that I really wanted to talk about before I left. So I put a little presentation together for y'all. And please pardon me if it's a little sloppy or uncoordinated. I literally made it last night, right? But of course, with all of you in mind, I didn't even know who you were yet. I haven't even, had met you yet. But I was really feeling a lot of strong energy based on the whole, intention of this program. So I put something together called Our Genetic Memory in Motion. Culture plus education equals liberation. Anybody know what that is right there? DNA, little DNA strand, right? What is the purpose of this here? The little DNA strand, what does it record? I'm sorry? Genetic material, right? It records genetic material, right? What's embedded in our genes, essentially what's in our bloodstream, what's in our ancestry. It's all recorded in our genetic memory, right? So I wanted to incorporate the concept of the genetic memory because when I started teaching, it took me a long time to figure out what my identity was. What does it mean to have an identity? What is an identity? Who you are, right? So, before we get started, or before we continue, I should say, I want you to think about these 2 questions. What is the importance of your presence here today? Right? What's the importance? Maybe at an individual level, maybe at a communal level, at a global level. What is your importance? What is the importance of your presence? And the second question is, why are critical spaces like this important? And there's a reason why I included this word critical, right? So think about these 2 questions for a few seconds and then we'll share some answers. So the importance, right? That's the key here. Importance. So what do y'all think? What's the importance of y'all being here? Yes, Adrian.
There's been a decline in male teachers, but there's also a bunch of stereotypes going around that males aren't suited to be teachers for little kids. So it's like we're here to break some stereotypes, break some records.
Yeah, that's what's up. Cool. Anybody else? Why is it important that you're here? Or y'all just like, it's summer, didn't have nothing to do, chilling at the pad, all right? So what is it?
Young adults such as us to become teachers, to increase the numbers of male teachers in elementary school.
Cool. Anybody else? Yes.
I feel like us being here is kind of like starting like a community it's like acceptable to other males to go into the field and stuff. For them not to feel like they're alone going into it.
Yeah, and I like how you use the word acceptable, right? Why did you say acceptable?
Because kind of like people feel that males are not accepted in that field, but it's like we're together and we're going into that. We hope to go into that, so you guys come along too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, right? And that's kind of a perfect segue to the next question, right? Why are critical spaces like this important? And it's just because of that. It's critical, right? This space is critical, not only because we're trying to enter a field that has historically maybe been denied to males, socially constructed, right? This is not something that's like, oh, you're a male, sorry, you can't teach. That's just the rules. It's just an unwritten rule, kind of, where not a lot of male teachers teach in the K through 12 or with younger kids, right? Or even in general. But have you ever thought about why? What is it? What's the stereotype?
That we're like mean and tough.
Yeah, we're too tough to take care of little kids, to be loving to a little baby, because that's what women do, right? Men are supposed to be out there using their hands, right? Doing construction in factories, working with steel and metal and wood, right? All tough, because that's what men are, So it's important that we share these critical spaces because we get an opportunity to start breaking down all those social constructions, right? Because if you think about it, if a social construction was built, right, then that means it could also be taken down. It could also be broken down or deconstructed. So I wanted to talk about that too because I was on the same boat. Before I became a professor, and besides working here at CSUN, running the Mosaic program and teaching in sociology, I also teach at, I don't teach at LA Valley College. I run the foster youth programs. There's 2 foster youth programs for students that were formerly in foster care, right? And when you talk about the foster care population, there's a whole nother set of stereotypes, the way they're supposed to be, the way they should, what they should be doing, the way they grew up. There's a lot of misconceptions, right? So growing up, I fell into a lot of those stereotypes as well, which is what brought me essentially to the work I do now. In the Mosaic program, we provide mentors to continuation high school students. What's a continuation high school? Yeah? Some people think that, but you could get a high school diploma and a continuation too. What kind of student attends a continuation? I'm sorry? Slackers? Dropouts? It's all right. We're in a safe space. You could say it. Yes?
A school for which, school for children for whom traditional schools may be or are not, just not the best thing.
Yeah. What are the reasons why you think the traditional school route is not the best option for these students? What are some of the factors that are prohibiting them? Behavior, fighting, talking back,
Maybe family.
family, socioeconomic status. Some of them only go to work half of the day. Go to school half of the day, so the other half they could go to work, help their families. What else?
Time.
I'm sorry? Time? What about it?
So like, let's say be working.
Yeah?
Their family, they can't go to school because of it.
Yeah. A lot of continuation high school students, they go to the campus once a week, pick up a stack of work, they take it home, bring it back the next week, turn it in, grab another stack, take it home, complete it, turn it in, pick up another stack, and it continues until they get their high school diploma. And then the rest of the time, they're either working or raising a family, right, or supporting their immediate family. So it's very non-traditional. So what kind of student attends a continuation?
A student that can't go to a traditional school.
Primarily males, boys, like you. Why do you think that is? Are boys more prone to bad behavior? Are boys more prone to dropping out? Are boys more prone to not making it in the traditional high school route? What is it about boys that's putting them in these alternative and continuation high schools on the verge of dropping out? What is it? The stereotypes, right? But these are stereotypes in motion. These are happening in real time. Stereotypes that are essentially dictating what a boy should or should not be doing. Not only is it in their personal lives, but it's translating into their academic lives as well. So what is it? What is it about these stereotypes, and where do they come from? And do we live up to them? Do you live up to those stereotypes? Because a big step for you in breaking down those constructions is being here today. You're making an attempt, I think you mentioned, Adrian, to change those cycles, right? So that happened to me. Hyper-masculine community I grew up in, toxically masculine. And I got involved in all the things that were essentially waiting for me as soon as I opened the doors to my house. What do you think those things were? I grew up in Pacoima. Right? What is Pacoima known for?
Gangs.
Gangs. Drugs. How do the boys do in the schools around Pacoima? It's horrible. The dropout rate is about 50%. Right? Which means that if I cut the room in half of you are going to graduate and half of the other half, I don't know what you're going to do. They become invisible in a huge sense. So a lot of these continuation high schools, I'm like, hey, what happened to Jose? Oh, I don't know. I think he moved. Oh, I think he got kicked out. They disappear. Maybe they go to work, maybe they do move, maybe something worse, who knows? But growing up in Pacoima was very easy for me to get involved in the wrong crowds, right? Like the ones moms and pops told you to stay away from. So the guys I grew up with fell into those social constructions as well. They fit those roles nicely. When I talk about toxic masculinity, what does that mean? Yeah, it hurts you and others in the process. You were going to say something else?
I was going to say what you said.
Yeah, think about it. So how does toxic masculinity play out in our communities every day? Do you know who's in prison right now? Overwhelmingly, males. Not only males, right? Because we're talking about this concept of mass incarceration, right? Y'all heard of mass incarceration? What does that mean?
Like 3 people inside a cell and stuff.
Yeah, right? It's overcrowded. That means people are getting locked up at a very fast rate, historically speaking, right? But who's getting locked up? Males, males of color. So then it's not really mass incarceration. Because if it was really mass incarceration, it'd be happening to everybody, including white males, but it's not. It's only happening to colored males. So it's not mass incarceration. It's incarceration that's happening to a very particular group of people, which is males of color. So guess who else fell into that stereotype? These are my homeboys right here. These are the guys I write letters to. I used to share cells with these guys. I lived with these guys for over a year of my life. As an 18-year-old kid, I just graduated high school. I got caught up with my homeboys, ended up in prison, and then these became my new homeboys. The only difference between me and them, though, is that I'm out here talking to you. And they're in prison forever. They're never going to get out. Because of those stereotypes and the social constructions, living up to their masculinity. Just looking at them. How are they postured in their picture? Physically. Yeah. Would you approach these guys and be like, hey, excuse me, do you know what time it is, sir? Do you know where Wilshire Boulevard is? Nah, you wouldn't ask them that. You would walk right by them and be like, sure, I'll just Google it later, right? Think about it. As an 18-year-old kid, these guys were the ones that approached me asking me where I'm from. Hey, homie, where you bang? Where you from? Now I'm an 18-year-old kid. I think I peed on myself a little bit that day when they came up to me. But at the same time, what did I have to do? I postured up just like him. And I had to claim my neighborhood. What if I didn't claim my neighborhood? I'm like, no, I'm not from nowhere. No, leave me alone. This is my first day. What would happen to me after that? Yeah, I would be humiliated. I would get bullied. I would get punked. Some of the things that happen elsewhere too, like in schools. So this toxic masculinity has consequences, guys. And unfortunately, I had to go through it. It was a very, very tough process for me, especially because I was 18 years old. I was there for 18 years old, and I got out when I was 19. What were y'all doing when you were 18, 19? You're supposed to be in school, right? Getting ready to graduate high school, go to college, have a little girlfriend or boyfriend on the side. But nah, I was with these guys. Missing my family, writing letters. And I was sad and I cried every single day. But I had to wait until the lights were off and I was sleeping and I was alone. Because imagine if I was crying and telling I miss my family in front of these guys. It just wouldn't happen. My street cred would have went down the drain if I would have been like, yo, man, I'm sad. I miss my family. Can I have a hug, Holmes? It wouldn't have happened. So I had to wait until the lights went off. I was in my bunk. And then that's when I did my crying very silently, which is what a lot of us do. We cry in private. Why do you think that is?
It's not socially acceptable for a guy to cry because it's not manly.
Yeah. And what happens if you do cry, though?
You get labeled as a sissy.
Yeah, sissy. What's wrong with you? Fool, man up. Why you acting all soft? And that translates to the kids that are paying attention to you committing those actions. So essentially, what happened to me is exactly what happened to them. Each one of them struggled with drugs. I was a drug addict too. I struggled with cocaine, with crack and meth and alcohol. So did they. I was a victim of child abuse. So were they. I grew up in a poor community saturated with brown folks. So did they. They walked out of their house. They saw drugs and crime. So did I. So it's only eventual that we're going to end up in the same place. You could argue otherwise, but all the stats, all the facts, they point to the truth. This is what's happening to our boys right here. They're getting locked up. They're mistreating women because they're trying to fulfill this tough role. They're getting into trouble at school because they're trying to impress their homies. Or trying to bully somebody else because that's what guys do. Boys will be boys. So this is an opportunity for us to start questioning those stereotypes. And even more so, taking action to combat against them. So for me, it took a lot of transformation. It took a lot of soul seeking. So when I got out of prison, I was like, man, I need to get busy. I need to go get me a job. So there I go, looking for jobs. So what usually happens to ex-convicts looking for work? Rejected, denied. Oh, Mr. Ojeda, we received your application, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take you at this time. Cool, thank you. Apply to another job. Oh, cool, perfect. You're just the person we're looking for. As soon as we get the live scan and the background check out of the way, we'll be good to go. Fuck, I'm already sweating. Cool, thank you. All right. A couple weeks later, Mr. Ojeda, unfortunately, we received your background check, investigation, this and that, and we can't offer you the position. Cool, thank you. And I did that for several years. The only people that would hire me, I worked in factories, I worked as a mechanic, I worked for UPS until they did a background check on me and then they fired me. So the only solution to me was go to college, fool. Go learn everything that you didn't learn in high school. I went to 4 high schools, by the way. Not because I was academically challenged or had an intellectual deficiency. Why do you think I went to 4 different high schools? Yeah, because of this bullshit right here. As soon as I walked into a school, a gang of dudes walking up to me, hey, where you from, this and that. Man. Next school, and the same thing repeated over and over and over. Until finally something clicked, which was me ending up in prison. That's what clicked. And then I started getting to know these guys. These are some of the most nicest, respectable, humble human beings I ever met in my life. They taught me a lot, and they also threatened me. You know what they threatened me with? Because I was 18, and this guy's 52. This guy's 52 years old. Look how swole he is. Look. These guys are in their 40s. This guy's 52 years old at the time that picture was taken. I was 18. Why do you think they threatened me, these 3 guys? Yeah.
They told you to get your stuff together?
Yeah, they told me, hey, you need to get your stuff together. You're only 18 years old. Do you want to be like us? If we ever see you back here again, you're done. I was like, it's a deal. I'm good. Say no more. So I did my term. I got out and I never went back. 20 years later. This was 20 years ago. Right? This guy's probably in their 60s now. This guy's probably getting close to he's probably in his 70s now. This picture was taken 20 years ago. It's actually, this year is the 20th anniversary of me getting out of prison. 20 years ago. And these guys are still there. So I want to talk a little bit about what I've been doing the last 20 years. I started thinking about who I was. In order for me to succeed in school, I needed to develop an identity. And my identity I knew was not working for me. The current identity I had, being the gangster, dope dealer, pimp, hustler, it was not working for me. It was not setting up future Alex to win. So I needed to shift. I needed to train my mind to think differently. But you have to remember, I didn't learn anything in those 4 high schools. I didn't learn anything in those 4 high schools except how to ditch, how to deal drugs, how to lie to teachers effectively, other things that you're not supposed to be learning in high schools. So I needed to develop a new identity. I needed to become a new person. All I knew about myself was that I was Mexican, my dad's from Sinaloa, my mom's from Durango, and I lived in Pacoima. I'm like, fuck, that's not a lot of like options right there, right? I'm done being the poor Mexican kid from Pacoima. That was it, I'm done. So I needed to develop something else. So what I did is I got my backpack, I filled it up with a few articles of clothing, and I got a one-way ticket to Mexico. Let's go soul searching. There I go to Mexico with my backpack. Mexico City, I landed. I got to the airport. I didn't have an itinerary. I didn't have my agenda of like a tourist. Like, oh, today we're going to go here, right? We're going to go ride the ferry. No. No agenda. No itinerary. I got to the airport, didn't know anybody. I just had a stack of cash in my pocket, backpack full of clothes. Vámonos, let's go. So then what I started doing was visiting museums. I started visiting archaeological zones that our ancestors built. It was a beautiful thing. And then I started asking myself, why wasn't I ever taught about this in school? Because that was getting me excited. The way drugs and gangbanging got me excited, my culture got me excited the same way. And then I started asking, why did I never learn this when I was a kid? This is what I needed. So I started learning about my culture, the Aztec culture, the Mayan culture, and I started realizing that our ancestors from Mexico, Central America, South America, and I even started learning about other cultures because educator, Paulo Fieri, he says if you don't appreciate other cultures, then it's very difficult to appreciate your own. So I started learning about African culture, I started learning about Chinese culture, Brazilian culture, and then I started learning about oppression and colonization in the process. I'm like, man, this is a beautiful thing. I wonder what happened to all this. And I'm like, oh shit, this is what happened to it. We were attacked. We were raped. And we were essentially annihilated as a people, including the African people, including the Mexican people, including the Central American people. That's why it was not taught to us, because it was deliberately destroyed. So now I was on a mission with my backpack in Mexico, trying to figure out to make sense of all of these things. So I ran into this concept here by a maestro named Coscacuautli Huitzicentel. I believe he was one of your former students, Dr. Collier. Huitzi, right? So Coscacuautli Huitzicentel is one of my mentors. He taught me how to be a man in a sense, where you respect women, you're a steward to your community, and you embrace other cultures at the same time developing your own. So I learned this concept called the Nawi Tonal Meyali. Y'all try to say that? Nawi? Nawi. Tonal Meyali. What does that mean? So Nawi, well, first of all, in the Nawa language is actually a language that's super, super old, thousands of years old. Its origins are in central Mexico, but then it started spreading out, right? There's some people that speak Nahua all the way in Guatemala. Actually, the word Guatemala is Nahua. The Nahua word for Guatemala is Cuauhtemalan. But the Europeans couldn't pronounce it, so they just said, oh, Guatemala's cool for now, right? The same thing with Mexico. Mexico's Nahua original word is Mexico. Mexico. But the Europeans were like, Mexico's cool, right? I can't pronounce Mexico, right? So when you read Nahua, you read it from the right to the left, unlike the way we read now, right? So we'll start with Meyali. Meyali is something that flows, or like a source, like a water source, or like a spring, right? And Tonali It means energy or heat. Tonali is also interchangeable with the word day. Like a day could be a tonali. In this case, it's energy or it's heat. And nawi means 4. 4. So what does this mean then? If we put it all together now. The 4 energy sources or the 4 springs, the 4 sources of energy. So what are we talking about? What 4 sources or what 4 sources of heat could we possibly be talking about? What do y'all think? Our ancestors were crazy. They developed this understanding of the human organism and the human functionalities to a level that blew my mind because they included a multidisciplinary approach to understanding the human being. Physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, anatomically. So they understood their bodies at a level where they could explain it to kids, and then kids could then take it to them in adulthood as a source of their identity. So the Nawi Tonal Meyali essentially refers to the 4 springs of energy that constitute our daily actions. So what caused you to wake up this morning? The alarm, right? What caused you to set the alarm? Obligations, right? Where do those obligations come from? What senses create this concept of obligation or responsibility? Like, oh, I got to do it. I got to wake up early because I got to be there because I said I was going to do it because I signed up for it, and there might be a $5,000 scholarship in the mix. I hope you applied for it, right? So let's talk about the Nawi Tonal Meyali and how they function. So the first source of energy, the first Tonal Meyali is the brain. What do we use the brain for? What type of decisions? Critical thinking, consciousness, and reasoning, right? Kind of like when you're at a stop sign and there's cars zooming by and you're like, damn, I don't think this fool's gonna stop. You know you got the right of way, but homie's coming fast, right? That's your brain telling you, fool, wait. It doesn't come from your heart, right? It's telling you intellectually, like, if you cross the street now, you're probably gonna die, right? So your brain makes very specific decisions for you on a regular basis, right? The intellectual ones, the ones with reasoning, with rationale, where you think about it, you're like, should I do it? Yeah, I'm gonna do it, right? That's one source of energy. The next one, in Nawa, the brain is called Kowakteshli. Y'all say Kowakteshli? Kowakteshli is your brain. The next one is the heart, the Yolot. Everyone say Yolot? Yolot. Yolot means heart. So what decisions do we make with our heart? Feelings, sentiments, right? It's like, oh man, I really like this girl, right? I really like this boy, but, So other feelings that you make with your heart, though, kind of like myself, this is what I experienced. There's this one homeless guy that lives in my neighborhood. He's there all the time, right? And sometimes he sells flowers, right? I drive by and I see him selling flowers. I don't need the flowers. I give my mom flowers all the time because of this dude, right? So I see him, I drive by, and I buy flowers from him. So what source of energy do you think makes me buy those flowers? My heart. Not my brain, because I'm like, damn, financially, can I afford this? I don't think about that. I don't think about, man, I can use this money for something else. Nah, my heart's telling me, like, man, help this old man out, right? So my heart essentially makes me buy that old man's flowers. So what other decisions do we make with our heart, with our feelings, with our sentiments? Because some of us never use that. Some of us like, nah, I'm cold-hearted, right? Not me. I don't use my heart, right? Right? So this is a lot of that toxic masculinity I was talking about. Like, nah, I don't have no feelings. Like, nah, you'll never see me crying. I don't get soft for girls. No girl has my heart. Only my mama, right? So this is one that we probably need to work on a little bit, yeah? So what's the next one? This is the one that we inherited from our caveman ancestors. That gut feeling. Damn, should I fight this saber-toothed tiger to get that pig, or should I bounce because I might die? That's the instinct, right? You're in the middle of a fight, the saber-toothed tiger. I'm talking about saber-toothed tigers, right? Because we inherited this from cavemen ancestors. Or Ellie. Everyone say Ellie. Ellie is your liver. That's where those strong, passionate emotions come out. You know there's a law that if you walk in on your spouse cheating on you with somebody else and you kill them, the court goes easy on you because it was a crime of passion. You had no control for that moment. So we're going to go easy on you. Did you know that? No. So even the law recognizes the Eli. Because they know when you make decisions with your gut, sometimes you can't control it. It's so powerful. It's that gut feeling, oh man, I don't like this vato right here. He rubs me the wrong way. Or man, this person gives me bad vibes. I'm going to stay away from him. That's your gut telling you like, shh. That's what we inherited from our caveman ancestors. That feeling of survival. That's the tool that causes us to keep going even when we're knocked down. That's what builds resilience. That fight or flight mode, right? That chemical reaction we experience. Sometimes they call it butterflies. That's the Ellie talking to you. Like, ooh, you're going to do it or not? You're going to do it? Right? But then the Ellie also has to communicate to the other sources of energy. Do we make this decision based on intellectual or sentimental? How do we make this decision? Right? And unfortunately, we make a lot of decisions with that energy too. It's called the tepili or tepoli, or our genitals. Everyone say tepili? Tepili. Tepoli? Tepoli. Right? That's our savage instinct. Right? So a lot of us also get into trouble making decisions only using that source. Both men and women alike. However, our ancestors also acknowledged it as a powerful source of energy. Right? No, you're absolutely right. These four energies are essentially what our ancient scholars said constitutes your decisions on a regular basis. Intellectual, sentimental, passionate, instinct, and then your natural reproductive instincts. These four sources, Nawi, Tonal, Meyali. So now, the one thing they were on a quest for was teaching their kids at a very young age, and this was the teacher's responsibility in the classroom, by the way, how to gain mastery in those four senses. That was the teacher's responsibility as they were educating kids in school. And I see it all the time in continuation high schools when teachers kick the students out of the room for misbehaving. Hey, you've been interrupting, you got to get out. So the kids, they get fired up and they start knocking chairs over and kicking desks on the way out because they have very little understanding of how this works. So the reason I wanted to talk to y'all about this today is because all of us here share this in common. Doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter where you were born, where your parents' background is. All of us have this in common, including the mentors and the teachers in the room. Some of us use these sources of energy more than others. Right, homie's still thinking about like, oh yeah, right? So each one of these four senses could also be used in a complementary fashion, meaning that sometimes, like I mentioned with the instinct, that the gut has to consult the brain. The brain has to consult the heart. The heart has to consult the brain. The brain has to consult the genitals. Man, do you really want to do this? Probably not. I'm sorry, I really want to go over, but I got to wake up early tomorrow for work. Right? Boom. That's your brain interrupting this source right here. Right? And vice versa. So think about these sources of energy and how it dictates your decisions every day. And what source you're using more than others. So then how does this, because this is all philosophical at this point. We don't know if this really works. It's all based on anecdotes, right? So how do we know if this really works? So our ancestors, when they talk about the fortunat meali, like we talked about, right? The intellect, the brain, the heart, the liver, the genitals, and then there's the ik sheet. Everyone say ik sheet. What could ik sheet possibly be? It's a combination of everything and the source of where it's all manifested into reality. Where is that? I'm sorry?
All around you.
It's all around you. Specifically, ik sheet, it means your feet. Why your feet? It gets you places.
You walk your own path.
You walk your own path. The path that you walk is what dictates your reality. The path that you walk is what dictates all of these sources. Not only that, but if you want to get scientific, your feet is what's connected to the ground. Electrically. Did you know that every socket in this room has a ground wire? Every electronic component, including this laptop, it needs to be grounded electrically. And just so you know, our body has electricity, so we're also grounded to the earth. If you look at any electrical box, I don't know how many of you are familiar with electrical construction, but you have to dig a copper rod like 8 feet into the ground. Because electricity needs ground. So if our bodies are full of electricity, what do we need then? We need to be grounded as well. But what if we don't have anything to be grounded to? Yeah, we lose our footing. If this laptop or that camera was not grounded, any little mishap, boom, misfire, short, camera doesn't work anymore, laptop burnt out, got to take it to the Geek Squad. That happens to us too as human beings. If we're not grounded in our reality, then we burn out, mishap, misfire. But unfortunately, Geek Squad can't help us in this case. So the Ichli is the reality that we walk every day. It becomes our truth then. So all of these sources that manifest themselves in our feet, what's keeping us grounded to the earth, I don't know if y'all knew, but when you walk barefoot on the bare earth, that feels good. Physically, physiologically, you feel better. That's why a lot of doctors, when you're sick, they're like, oh, are you getting out? Are you doing exercise? Right? Have you go on hikes? You go outdoors? Why are they pushing people to spend more time outside in nature? Oh, go on vacation. Oh, go to the beach. Oh, go on a hike. Why? To reconnect? Because most of us are disconnected. In order for you to reconnect, that means there was a disconnection at some point, right? So for a lot of us, including myself growing up, we're disconnected. We're not grounded to our realities. Because my reality was a facade. It was a fantasy. I was living in a fantasy world. Just like all the rappers and on TV and all of that, this is the same fantasy world. They're fulfilling a fantasy, like the way I was doing with the gang life. But then the reality hit me in the face. Whenever your freedom is stripped of you, you start thinking a different way. You start making moves, so to speak, that have more at stake. Right? So you put everything in, and you hope that your number hits. So in this case, I put all my chips on my culture. I'm like, my culture is what's going to save my life. And it did, literally. This is why. Our ancestors, and I'm speaking personally, and when I'm saying my ancestors, I'm talking about Mexico, Central America, and this whole American continent, right? Because we all share the same philosophies, all the way from the tip of Argentina and the Patagonia, all the way to Canada. We share the same ancestral philosophies, is what keeps us all connected. But then I started learning about cultures in Africa, and in China, and in Thailand, and they share similar philosophies too. Not only that, but also geographically, we're all positioned around areas that are heavily saturated with sunlight, because we're tropical people. Why do we need sunlight? I like having a tan, right? Vitamin D, right? So our ancestors, they used the sun and the path of the cosmos to create all of this. Does anyone know what that is right there?
Numbers.
What kind of numbers? It's the Mayan math system. These are Mayan numbers. With these numbers, you could create any algebraic equation possible. Just with 3 symbols. That little shell that represents a 0. By the way, the Mayas were the people that invented the concept of nothing, of 0. They represented it with the shell. And the dot represents 1. And the bar represents 5. Depending on how you stack them, determines the value of that digit. So these people invented a math system from scratch. They invented a calendar from scratch. I don't know if you knew, but it's hard to make these things. They created books, libraries, thousands and thousands of libraries filled with books. And they also built structures that are astronomically aligned with constellations. The sun, the moon, the different planets. Does anyone know where this is? No, it's near Tulum. It's in Chichen Itza, right? It's not too far from Tulum. So what's so special about Chichen Itza? Anybody? This structure was built with intention, by the way. Yes?
Was it for sacrifice?
That's probably what the history books will say, right? But good. That was a good answer. Anybody else?
I always want to say, is it due to the sun and the way the shadow is cast upon the actual pyramid, and the way I know it's dealing with with seasons.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I don't know if you noticed it here, but on the staircase, it's kind of like waving, right, like a snake. And at the bottom of the staircase, there's a head of a snake, of a serpent. This occurrence where the staircase appears to have a snake alongside of it only happens twice a year. As he mentioned, the seasons. It happens during the spring equinox and the fall equinox. So they built this entire structure. It's monumental, by the way. Look at the people. Right? Look like ants down there. This structure was built with the intention of helping them keep track of the seasons. Why? Why were they so obsessed with keeping track of the seasons? Crops. Right? Why do we need crops? Sustenance. Why do we need sustenance? To live. These communities actually reached a higher population than the Roman Empire at its peak. Which means that it takes a lot of agricultural technology. Did you know that the Olmecs from the Gulf of Mexico were the first to cultivate corn? That's crazy. How many of you like eating tortillas? You better thank the Olmecs for that, or else you'll be eating no quesadillas, no tacos, right? So this keeps track of the seasons, and this is just one structure in Mexico. You'll find these structures, in which I did when I was walking around with my backpack. I found tons of these all over the country. And then I went to Central America. I crossed the border into Central America. I went to El Salvador. Guess what I saw? A bunch of these. I went to Guatemala. Guess what I saw? I went to Honduras. Guess what I saw? I went to Belize. Guess what I saw? I went to Costa Rica. Guess what I saw? I'm like, damn, there's a pattern going on here, right? This whole continent was understanding things at a whole different level. And the more beautiful thing about the whole experience was that I get to inherit all of this. Not only do I get to inherit it, but I get to teach it and get paid for it. It's an amazing thing. So when I started going to college, I started learning about my ancestors in the process. I was unstoppable. And I always tell the story of a psychology professor who accused me of plagiarizing a midterm. She called me into her office one day after class, and she throws the paper all aggressively on her desk. And she's like, who wrote this for you? And I'm still bald-headed, wearing big-ass pants, looking all gangster. I'm like, what do you mean? Are my citations incorrect? and she's like, no. I just wanted to know who helped you write this. And I was like, wait a minute. I think she's accusing me of cheating. And I was like, are you insinuating that I cheated? And she's like, oh, no. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't have help writing this paper. So at that point, I didn't know whether I should be flattered, like a compliment, like, oh, thank you, right? Or an insult. Like, man, this lady doesn't think that a little brown Mexican dude could write academically. And the paper was legit. It was a psychology paper on why geese fly together. You know, geese fly together, right? They even create like V's and everything. It's pretty crazy. So I wrote a paper about it. And she's like, this is a great paper. Who helped you? I'm like, dang, like that? That was crazy. But that was the moment where I realized that I was in the right place. But how messed up is that situation though, right? And she's my professor, my teacher who's supposed to nurture my learning to take me to that next level of understanding. And she's accusing me of cheating because my paper was too good for her. So think about it. So going into the college experience, I was always challenged with those stereotypes we were talking about earlier. So I always had to defend myself. But I always came back to this. This is what I always came back to. Because it made so much sense to me. Conceptually, astronomically, scientifically. I showed you the Aztec calendar. This is actually a picture that I took when I was in the Museum of Chapultepec in Mexico City. This thing is 12 feet in diameter. I'm 6'2". Picture two of me stacked up. This is how big it is. So I come to like right here, right? So it's probably like 2.5 of me. This thing is monumental. I don't know if y'all seen it in real life, but you see it, it takes your breath away. It's hand carved from one piece of basalt. One solid piece of rock this is carved out of by hand. And we're talking about the 15th century this was made, the 1400s. And this, it records a lot of things. A lot of people call it the Aztec calendar. A lot of homeboys in the penitentiary have it tattooed and they're like, oh, Aztec power. I'm like, but what does it mean, right? They can't tell you what it means, but they know that it's brown pride, right? So when we start breaking it down, we start noticing that it not only records the years, but also the months and the days and then the seasons as well. So this first circle here, this represents the earth. And then we have 20 symbols that start from here. If we count them all the way around, 2, 3, 4, all the way around, it gives you 20 symbols. There's 20 days in the Aztec calendar month. 20 days and 18 months. Any mathematicians out there? 20 times 18? 360 days. What does that sound like? It sounds almost like a year, right? So keep in mind that the larger gears move at a slower rate, where the smaller gears move at a faster rate, meaning that the smaller circles, they move faster, and the larger circles, right, they move a little slower, like the years are slower than the months, and the months are slower than the days. Make sense? So some of the uses of the Tonal Powali, by the way, the Aztec calendar is called the Tonal Powali, right? Everyone say the Tonal Mashot. Everyone say Tonal Mashot. The Tonal Mashot. And this is what I started realizing, that a lot of cultures around the world, right, including the Mayas, the Olmecs, a lot of Asian and African cultures, they use similar calendars to keep track of similar phenomena, right? So the Shupawali, which I just explained, the 18-month calendar with the 20 days, it's how they kept track of the solar year, 360 days. And then they also had another calendar embedded in the Aztec calendar, in the Tonal Mashot, called the Tonal Powali. But the Tonal Powali is only 260 days long. What the hell happens in 260 days? How many months is that? How many months is 260? How many? 9. There's 9 months in the Tonalpoali. What's significant about 9 months? Yeah, that's the gestation period of women. All of us were in our mom's womb for 260 days roughly. So why would they create a calendar with 260 days then? Keeping track of when they're going to be born? You say something else? Yeah. So whenever someone had a baby in the community, they refer to the Tonalpoali. The Tonalpoali is essentially a calendar that bridges the relationship between human beings and nature. So what happens is they use the Tonalpoali whenever a baby's born to determine their energies of that specific moment in time. All of us here, even if we're identical twins, we were born at a specific time. Meaning a specific second, a specific minute, a specific hour, a specific day, a specific week, a specific month, a specific year, a specific season, and a specific decade, a specific century, right? You get the drift? So all of us here have something in common, but we also have our own differences. And that is the energies that were around us the second that we were born. So the second we were born, there was a person responsible for recording the time and the day and the month and the year, etc. Why was it important to document these births in such a way? So intricately, so detail-oriented. What were these energies important for? Go ahead.
What they're destined to achieve.
Exactly. That's it. But because when Europeans came here, they couldn't wrap their heads around that concept, they started writing that the Aztecs were psychic. Like they already knew what their kids were going to do. Based on this calendar, it told the future. So did it really tell the future? Was it like this magic 8-ball that when you shake, what am I going to be when I grow up? Right? It wasn't like that. It was actual calendar that was designed around nature's elements. What was happening in the day? Was it cold? Was it nighttime? Was it winter? Was it summer? Was it in the afternoon? Was it the morning? All of those energies that were around when you saw the light for the first time, when you took in that first breath of air, is what essentially determined your destination. It determined the responsibility you had to your community. I'll give you an example of how real this is. I was born on the year 7 Knife, or Chicome Tecpa. And I was born on 8 Masat, 8 deer. I was born on the week of Se Shoshi, which has energies of Huehuecoyo. So the people that were born with the combination of energies that I possess are usually people who become teachers, artists, or speakers. So I'm like, wait a minute. The fuck, this is crazy, right? So you're telling me that the people that were born on my birthday are usually teachers, artists, musicians, or educators? I'm all of those things. I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I'm an educator, and I'm a speaker. And that's exactly what the Tonalpoali said. And I was like, nah, let me do it again. So I'm right there calculating again, and again it pops up. The Huehuecoyo energies, the one I told you about, it essentially means old coyote. Huehue means old, or it could also mean a tree. Why would a tree and old be synonymous?
Deeply rooted,
Yeah, trees are super old. They got roots into the earth that are thousands of years old, just like an old person. So our ancestors, we treat trees the way we treat our old folks. Some of you are like, damn, that's messed up. But I'm talking about respect, right? Like you treat them with respect, with care, with love, right? Because it's that same concept. That tree was around absorbing the energies that your ancestors put out for you, right? So when I started learning about this is when I realized what I needed to do, what my destination was. I knew my calling, right, There's an author named Linda Towie Smith. She writes about the Maori people in New Zealand. And she says that they listen for callings. Their community and their physical environment gives them a calling. What do you think the calling is about? What is the calling? Like when I say teaching is my calling, what am I referring to?
What you're supposed to do
Yeah.
on this planet.
Your purpose. Yeah, something that's meaningful, something that you use to spend the rest of your living days, your energy, your efforts, the relationships you build, the connections that you make. But what if you're not listening for a calling? What if you're not even paying attention? Because you're distracted with Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram. I'm sorry?
This refers to as the birds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? Something could be calling you and calling you and calling you, but if you're not open to listening, it's going to pass right by. So it's important for us to be open to those callings. Because if I wasn't open to all of these experiences that I had in my life, I wouldn't have been able to listen and to make that connection like, man, maybe I should be a teacher. Maybe I should continue going to college. The number one reason why I transferred to a university from Los Angeles Mission College was because of another professor. Didn't accuse me of cheating this time. What she said is she handed back an essay to me and she's like, hey Alex, do you mind reading your essay in front of the class today? And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that, right? That's for nerds, right? I'm going to be a teacher's pet, right? Because that was my mentality in high school. Whenever you did well in school, you're like a nerd, right? So I was like, why? And she's like, because I want the rest of the class to see how an essay should be written. And I was like, dang, like that? I was like, cool, if you put it that way. I was like, boom, so I'm up there reading my essay. After I get the round of applause, after school, I told the teacher, like, hey, you know what, at first I was really embarrassed, but thank you. And she's like, you know what, have you ever considered a career in writing? And I was like, nah, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, you should keep writing. You write really well. You should transfer to a university and keep writing. And I was like, this lady's tripping right now, right? I was struggling at the community college level. How am I going to transfer to university? No one in my family had a degree at that point, right? None of my family went to college. First generation. My parents are immigrants. They don't speak the language. There's generational barriers. I couldn't go to my mom's and be like, hey, mom, ¿me ayudas con el FAFSA? She'd be like, sáquese de aquí, cabrón, con su FAFSA, right? My mom's couldn't help me with college applications. My pops couldn't help me with my homework. So I was on my own. So I had people like that professor telling me like, yo, do it. You could do it. And she's a stranger. I didn't know her. But research also indicates that when you pair up with a caring stranger, right, that serves as a mentor or a teacher, like a coach, they tend to have more of effect on the protective factors in your life. What does that mean? That means that you stay away from risk factors. So when you have a mentor or someone maybe a little bit older that you look up to, that you could see yourself in, then they in turn become a protective factor in your life. Meaning that when you go back to the Nawitonal Meyali and you confront a decision that could possibly have toxic consequences, how does that protective factor come into play?
Their influences tell you like what you should do.
Mm-hmm. Your influences, positive ones, they're in the back of your head telling you like, nah, don't do it, right? They're going to be disappointed in you if you do. Remember the deal, right? Remember you have responsibilities. And then that's when the Nawitonal Meyali kicks in and they start consulting each other. Boom, 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 right? And then it becomes the reality when you make that decision finally, when you manifest it in your path, right? So when we're discussing all of these ideas, it's all based on human interactions, but it also causes for you to be open to things that you possibly didn't know before, right? Kind of things like this. So I don't know if any of you were asking, what about the other 5 days in 360? I thought a year was 365. Or what? Is it? Or is it not?
364 and a quarter.
It's actually 365 and a quarter, right? You're right the first time. So The 5.25 days is actually recorded in a whole other calendar called the Nemotemi. Everyone say Nemotemi. The Nemotemi calendar is only 5 days long and 6 hours. So what do they do in that time span of 5.25 days? By the way, the 5.25 days is added at the end of the 360-day count. So for those 5.25 days, which is essentially 5 days and 6 hours, they would use it to clear their bodies for the new year. Kind of like what we say now, like, oh, I have a New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose 20 pounds, right? I'm going to go to the gym every day, right? And then February comes around and you're like, I don't need to go to the gym today, right? So the Nemotemi was essentially used to prepare your body for the new year. So what they did is they fasted for 5 days. You know what fasting is? You don't eat. You flush your body of all the toxins that you acquired that previous year. Which I still try to practice, but week 3, I'm like, oh, day 3 of the Nemotemi, I'm like, man, I need a protein bar or something, right? It's rough. And it just goes to show you the level of discipline that these people had, right? So for those 5 days, cleanse their whole body, cleanse their whole mind, their heart, their spirit, so they could start the new year fresh, brand new vessel, clean, right? So the Tonal Macho also records the equinoxes, as I mentioned earlier with Chichen Itza. And essentially, an equinox is the halfway point of the path of the sun. During an equinox, there's exactly 12 hours day and 12 hours night. What about in the summer solstice, which we just experienced? What was the summer solstice, June 21? What happens that day? The beginning of summer? The longest day of the year, shortest night of the year. And it's also the time of the year where the sun is furthest from Earth, which is crazy. You would think it would be colder because the sun is farther, but it's hotter and farther. So the solstice is when the northern Tropic of Cancer and the southern Tropic of Capricorn, the sun reaches those extremities. Did y'all know that the tropics are what keeps track of the sun's path? Because I always wondered in school, like, what's the Tropic of Capricorn for? Why is there an imaginary line on the globe? 23 degrees north and 23 degrees south along the equator are the tropics. Beyond those tropics, the sun doesn't travel any further. Or what it looks to us on Earth, it looks like the sun is moving. But in actuality, we're the ones moving around the sun. But the tropics are what keeps track of the sun's path. So if you notice, every ancient culture, like the ones I talked about earlier, the Mayas, the Aztecs, you know, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the ancient Chinese, all of those civilizations I just mentioned, they're all geographically located along the equator between the tropics. Is that a coincidence? Why would they want to be in between the tropics? We talked about it earlier, talking about the sun. Why would you want to be located geographically between the tropics along the Earth's belly? Agriculture. The reason why these ancient cultures became so densely populated and so sophisticated is because of agriculture. They knew that if they stood directly under the sun or as closest to the sun as possible, then you would reap more fruit, more vegetables, more sustenance to maintain enormous communities. Right? So when you maintain these enormous communities, logically you're going to start creating schools, social structures, government structures, right? The Aztec calendar also records the aphelion and the perihelion. Any of you ever heard of that? What is the aphelion? When the earth is farthest from the sun in the summer. And the perihelion? Our ancestors even knew that. With no telescopes, no technology, they knew when the earth was farthest and closest to the sun. And they recorded it in their calendar. And they acknowledged it every year with ceremony. So essentially, then, the Aztec calendar, it becomes a labyrinth, connecting humans with nature. So if you think about space and you think about the earth, what's in between? Us. So the sky is here, The earth is here, and we're in between it. So we're essentially what connects both of them, which is why indigenous cultures, they're so in touch with nature because they know the importance of it. Right? So when I started learning all of this stuff, I became more confident in my abilities to be a learner. And it's important. It's important developing this idea of being a learner. Because when you think about the concept of a student, right? So everyone think about a student. What does a student mean? How does a student look? How would you define a student? Ambitious?
Curious.
I'm sorry?
Curious.
Curious?
Someone who wants to learn.
Someone who wants to learn. Keyword wants. I'm sorry? Of a kid? Okay. Can an adult be a learner too? Yeah, I'm still learning. As Dr. Collier mentioned, I'm in a doctorate program right now. Sometimes I don't want to be a learner, but at this point, there's no turning back, right? So listen to this. Our ancestors, they had a concept of a student, and they referred to it as a momachtiani. Everyone say momachtiani. And I don't have it on my PowerPoint here, so I'm going to break it down on the whiteboard. Oh, these are Sharpies, so I can't do that. So, mo, mach, tia, ni. Everyone say mo machtiani. Mo, it means you or yourself. Actually, this is like me. Machtia, it means to learn. And ni, it means something habitual or a habit. So now let's break it down. Let's look at this linguistically. So then, momachtiani, something habitual. Machtia means to learn, and mo, it means you, yourself. So when we're looking at the word momachtiani, it literally translates to someone who habitually teaches themselves. But wait, I thought you said it was a student. I thought a student learns from teachers. Yeah? Right? So what a momachtiani does essentially takes responsibility for their own learning. Have you ever blamed the teacher for failing you on a test? Oh, the teacher doesn't like me. I think she's racist. Right? I think she had a bad day, so she failed me. We're very quick to blame our teachers. But in this philosophy, the momachtiani is responsible for their own learning. So you're responsible for getting your homework done because you know that it's due tomorrow. You're responsible for getting that book report done because you know it's due next week. It's your responsibility. So if you don't turn it in and the teacher fails you, whose fault is it then? Someone still said teachers. It's yours. Because you take responsibility for your own learning. And when you break it down linguistically in terms of what it means to be a teacher, it's essentially the same thing, except the prefix gets changed to te machtiani. Someone who causes someone else to learn. So then the teacher can also be the learner. Right? For my educators?
Yes.
The teacher also becomes the learner. So then this process of education becomes reciprocal. It's a mutual understanding. Which is why it's so beautiful. So when I teach in the classroom, and I've taught K through 12, right? I've taught middle school, which was crazy. Probably never do it again, right? And now working with high school students, right? And at the community college and university levels. So I've shared classrooms with people from different stages and phases in their development. And it's a beautiful thing because it's an exchange of experiences. So just know that going into this profession, the number one thing that's going to help you along the way is your own experiential knowledge. Everything that you have obtained up to this point is going to be your number one tool for success. So all the people you have around you, the loving adults, the caring people that want to see you succeed, are the ones that you need to reach out to when you're having trouble, when you're not believing in yourself, when you're thinking about giving up. Those are the people that are going to tell you, you know what, this is normal what you're going through. Think about your nawito nalmeyali, homie. You want to make that decision, but consult the other sources first before you make that decision. So then we start getting a holistic understanding of the way we operate when it comes to not only being the learner, but being the educator as well. And as an educator here at Cal State Northridge, I always, always, always keep the student at the center. So I make it a point to learn about their culture, to learn about their interests, and to learn about how they feel comfortable in the classroom. So I steer away from the traditional model of education, where you sit in rows, where you listen to me lecture so you could take notes so I could test you on it later, so I could see how smart you are. I steer away from that model because I understand that our experiences growing up in our communities are just as valid as any book knowledge. Like myself, if I wouldn't have all of the experiences growing up, being in gangs, getting involved in drugs, being incarcerated, I would have never, ever run into all of this knowledge right here. This knowledge is buried. And it was my responsibility to go out and excavate it. So in a way, I'm kind of like an archaeologist too. Because I go out and I dig knowledge that's been stolen from us and buried and burned. So I take it, I excavate it, and then I present it to youngsters like you. And I say, this is why it's important for you to get an education, because this. Your kids, your little brothers, your little sisters, your nephews, your nieces, they need to know this about themselves. They need to know about their cultural differences and similarities. They need to know how that interprets in the classroom. All of the papers I wrote in grad school, they're all through an indigenous perspective. What do I mean by that? Whenever you write a homework assignment, whenever you talk to someone, you're coming at them from a specific perspective. There could be a hyper-masculine perspective, but it could also be an indigenous perspective, right? Which means that it considers the whole situation and not just my personal opinions. So I consider everybody in the room. Even when it comes to pronouns, right? When I refer to y'all, I don't say you guys. Some of you might not identify as guys or girls. You might not identify with either. I don't know that, so I have to keep that in mind when I'm in the classroom. Going back to student-centered teaching and learning, right? So when we're thinking about this concept of education and using it as a career, not only are you using it to obviously eat, put a roof over your head, buy yourself clothes, raise your family, but you also have a responsibility. You have a responsibility not only to yourself, but to your community. What do I mean by that?
You need to help others. You need to help people that where you came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was talking to my mentor yesterday, Weetzi, and I was like, you know what makes me really upset? Teachers that do like the super basics. Like they just do just enough so that no one complains or that they could get their paycheck. And I feel that every educator, every teacher needs to do all their responsibilities in their job description and then a little bit extra. Because that's the responsibility that we chose. This is the calling that we decided to listen to. This is the path that we decided to take. So with that comes a huge responsibility, because you're responsible for educating a group of folks. And you're getting education from them as well. So think about it. If you're a teacher and you're going into a classroom full of kids and you don't care because Mexico lost a soccer game yesterday and you're in there all pissed because there was traffic in the morning, and you're communicating that to your class and you're giving off those negative vibrations and you're not making an effort to put in passion in your learning that day, what service are you doing to those kids? You're not, right? You're actually doing them a disservice. So as an educator, you need to be aware of all of those things, being mindful. And going back to our biological understanding of the way the human functionality works, right? All of you have that. And those are going to be your tools when you go into the teaching profession. And all of us here are going to be there to witness it and to guide you along the way. So I have a few minutes left, and I wanted to open it up to any questions or comments, or if we wanted to get into a bit of a discussion. I have about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to see if anyone had questions, or if anything kind of stood out, or if anything that kind of you related to. Yes?
What class do you teach here?
I teach Sociology 420. It's a community service learning course, and it's attached to the Mosaic internship. So what we do is we send university students into the community to work with 8 of our continuation high school partners. And we send CSUN students into continuation high schools essentially to serve as mentors to kids that are on the verge of dropping out. So what mentors do is we help them catch up on their credits, help them get back on the graduation track, and essentially help them graduate. Mm-hmm.
What do you get in that program?
It's an application process and then an interview. And then once you do the application and the interview, then you're given a permission number to add the course. Mm-hmm. I usually offer it to juniors and seniors because they're already kind of thinking about career, they're transitioning to graduation. So once they go through the internship, they get more real life experience in terms of education, or if they want to do social work, or if they want to do counseling or therapy, because we're exposed to all of that, right? Working with students in continuations, we're exposed to case management, social work, counseling, psychology, law enforcement. Most of these kids are on probation for what happened in their traditional schools, right? So it gives you a lot of exposure to the possibilities of transitioning into the professional world. Yes?
I just relate to like everything you talked about right now because I'm from Oklahoma and I see all that stuff going on.
Nice.
Luckily I had my dad who like wanted me to not go along the path of everybody else doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're very fortunate because a lot of the students I work with at the continuation high school level, I mean, their parents are absent, right? And it speaks a lot to the toxic masculinity in our communities too, where, you know, men are good enough to make babies, but they're not good enough to take care of them, right? And then they end up bouncing. So that's something else that we need to start developing too, the sense of responsibility to our families, right? But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments or anything?
So Alex, when our students come here, we keep saying when they come.
Oh, they will. Yeah.
How can they get in touch with you?
Oh, that's actually, I think, my next slide here. Here's my email, guys. So if you ever need to reach me, I'm only on campus over the summer 1 day a week on Thursdays that I have class. But during the fall and spring semesters, I'm on campus all the time. You could also catch me at LA Valley College. I'm there also Monday through Thursday. Like I mentioned, I run the foster youth programs there, and we do a lot of work in the community as well with partnerships with the Mosaic program. So my responsibility at Valley College is essentially to build a bridge for Valley College students to come to CSUN. So I help them with the transfer process. Mm-hmm. Yes?
I'm curious, what was the main inspiration once you got out of prison to find a better life? Was it your two homies? Was that the main inspiration, or what was the...
Yeah, you know, I think it was a combination of things. Because what happened is that when I got out, it was like the lack of being able to find employment. But then also, a lot of my homeboys were getting killed. Mm-hmm. They were getting killed in battle, so to speak, right? I grew up with 3 guys from middle school to high school. There was always 4 of us all together all the time, right? Anywhere we would see us at parties, at school, grubbing, us 4, we were always together. So now, one of them passed away, right? He got killed. Another one committed suicide, right? He jumped in front of the train. And the other one's addicted to meth right now. And then there's me. So my 4 homies, I've known them since little kids. Think about it, right? So that was a big inspiration too. I was like, I don't want to die. So when I tell people education saved my life, I say that in a literal sense, as well as a figurative sense, right? Because education saved my life because it allowed me to take advantage of all these opportunities, but it also kept me off the streets. It gave me a new purpose, right? There's a psychiatrist by the name of Viktor Frankl, I believe, that he was in the Nazi concentration camps. And he said that whenever you're going through struggle, it's important to attach meaning to it. So you need to struggle with meaning. So when I was struggling, I was always focused on not letting my family down. That was my purpose. Because whenever you're struggling without anything meaningful in your life, what does that translate to a lot? Yeah, you're not going to do anything. You fall into depression, right? A lot of folks, unfortunately, commit suicide. So when you struggle without meaning, then there's no hope. But when you're struggling with meaning, then you create crazy things. Like me, I struggle every day. I'm still poor. I still live in Pacoima. I struggle every day, but now I have meaning. And it's a beautiful journey, right? So all of those things in tangent kept me going with my family too, and then feeling like I owed them something. Because every time they went to prison to go visit me, it was the worst experience I've ever faced. It was worse than the stabbings I've been involved in, the shootings, the drive-bys, the street rumbles and all that. Seeing my parents visiting me in prison was worse than all of those things combined. So I felt that I owed them something. So when I got my BA, I gave them my diploma. Mom, Dad, this is for you. Got my master's. Mom, Dad, this is for you. So now with my doctor, the same thing. Mom, Dad, this is for you. So that's what keeps me going, right? Is not only that, but then also the community I work with. I still work with Pacoima. I work with Sylmar. I work with Van Nuys, North Hollywood, Canoga Park. These are all communities with boys and girls like us. So when people say like, why are you still here? Like you could teach anywhere. Like, yeah, I could teach anywhere, but I want to teach here. This is my hood. These are my kids. These are my brothers and my sisters. So I feel like the work needs to be done from the inside out, right? Good question. Thank you. Any others?
Actually, Alex, we have to get ready to go to observations first.
Perfect.
Let's give Alex a big...
Thank you. Thank you. And then just once again, I wanted to thank everyone for sharing the space and sharing your comments and your questions. It's a real beautiful thing. And I just wanted to thank also the organizers and everyone that's participating for sharing their knowledge. This is a great opportunity, guys. You need to take advantage of it, right? Even if you don't go into teaching, it's something that you could use with you pretty much for the rest of your lives. So thank you again, and I wish you the best in your futures. There's my email. Contact me if you need anything. Even if you need a kick in the butt to keep you going, send me an email. I'll be happy to do that. All right? All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day.